Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're actually doing the first time I've ever done this, Champs Pick'ems. So in Madrid specifically and Shanghai, there are a lot of people in the comments just asking, yo, can you do, Pick'ems and stuff like that? Can you post them? I never really did. I talk about it in my Discord sometimes. I'd like post a screenshot of what I had, but at the end of the day, I've never actually done them in a video and actually explained kind of like what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. So being that if you've never really watched like a pick'ems video before or a breakdown, I don't really want to go off the deep end for all of these undecided matches. The real stuff that I want to try to like talk about or at least share my opinion on are these four that we know that are going to happen. And this first one being DRX and Sentinels. I think this is going to be by far the best match of these because it's going to be like the closest. I think these teams are getting kind of like back into form. Obviously, DRX came through uppers, so it's not like they had like a rough start. Sentinels, on the other hand, did. Okay, they ended up getting beat on by G2, or sorry, Gen G, and they ended up coming through lowers and actually beating them to qualify for this. I think that this is going to be closer. In terms of who I think is going to move on, I would probably have to give it to DRX just because I think their map pool is just a little favored compared to Sentinels with the things that they've been banning and what they've been doing lately. And then being that this is probably like your like best match, maybe like you consider this one as well. I think that since DRX are in this position, they're actually going to go to the uppers like pretty easily against playing up against these Chinese teams here. So that is Sentinels moving down with Trace and EDG. I think that Trace have this upset potential. We've obviously seen that already, but in terms of the Chinese league, EDG dominates. I think that they have the edge going into that game. Trace do have momentum, but I do think it's going to kind of stop because they're going back to that domestic matchup. It's not the international territory anymore where, they're entering the unknown. People don't know how to play against these comps. I think EDG's drilled for it, and I think they're going to be ready for it. G2 Leviathan, we have our America's matchup here. In terms of Leviathan, I'm not by any means disappointed by their gameplay, but it's just something where they start very weirdly sometimes. They're very inconsistent, and we saw that in last Masters where they didn't even make the playoffs of the event. I think G2 have a lot of momentum right now. I don't really think that they're in a honeymoon phase anymore, but they're at a point where they're constantly like evolving and they're just getting better every day. And I think with the momentum they have, the backing they have, that they're actually going to be able to take down Leviathan, who seems a little more like stagnant in the way that they play, and not necessarily just limited. But we talked about their sunset before, but outside of that, I'm not like disturbingly impressed, like I am with that map when they play other maps, and I see them do that. So I think G2 have the upper hand in this one. Team Heretics versus Fnatic, EMEA matchup here. I think Fnatic are in a position where they're going to kind of do this big brother thing to Team Heretics. I don't think any of the Team Heretics players have really outlived that 2-0 lead that they threw in the EMEA playoffs, where Fnatic came back and reverse swept them. Or I think at least it was a reverse sweep. I might be wrong about that, but Fnatic kind of reigns supreme there. I view this matchup the same way that I view the Chinese matchup. Is that like this is like home turf. Fnatic have played against these guys. They know these guys, and I don't think Team Heretics have like the mental dexterity to push through that. I think Fnatic have been looking better when Boaster is like shooting. Things are working well. When he's not, they're kind of not. I don't know if he loses confidence or whatever it is, but in terms of going forward, that's what we're going to kind of need to see out of him in that regard. So now we kind of have like our upper matchup here. So I like DRX in over EDG. I think this could be a 2-0. And like I said, in this spot here, in this matchup, this is going to be very close. A close 2-1 game. It really could go either way. I still think DRX has the advantage. But that is a game that's just going to push somebody straight into the upper final there. So getting into this bottom semifinal here, G2 versus Fnatic. I think the main difference maker here is going to be like the taste for G2. They're going to realize that they're right there, and I think we might see like our first time of just like a little bit of like shakiness like from them. I think Fnatic is a hard team to play against if you are G2 because I think that they're very similar. Valorant is very good going up against teams who are kind of like they have the ability to either go really fast or really slow the game down, and he can manipulate both of those situations. I think Fnatic have a nice pace change with that. They have a lot of people who can just win rounds out of thin air. We've seen it done with Chronicle Hero, obviously Durka. Boaster's even a guy to do it. Okay, Alpha, obviously a guy to do it. So I think that this matchup right now favors Fnatic in terms of the map pool that's going to be played. I think G2 are still hiding some things, but I don't know how much I trust their depth in terms of like comps and stuff like that. The Haven, for example, Omen, Viper, Yoru, definitely an interesting approach to say the least. But I feel like that's a composition where you need a lot to go right to be able to win. And if things aren't going your way, because Fnatic are doing good tempo changes, they're drawing out your utility, right? They're playing like a championship level team. It's not going to be easy for G2. So I think that they're going to fall 2-1 here, and Fnatic are going to move on to the upper final. Okay, so now in lowers here, we'll pause since we have this upper final set of DRX and Fnatic. I think that Sentinels are going to be able to beat Trace. I still think that game would be close. I think it's just going to be a 2-1 win for Sentinels there. I don't think that they're going to go out like that, and it's going to kind of be the same exact thing with groups where they get beaten by DRX in like a close matchup, and they're going to come down. They're going to have a little fire in them, and they don't want to exit that early against Trace. So I think Trace are going to fall there. I think Trace are kind of out of steam after being deflated by EDG when they're down here. The upset potential is kind of like fading away, right? They already kind of like had their moment. I don't see them going really any further than that. And if they do end up beating Sentinels, I don't think that they're going to get past the lower round 2. Leviathan versus Team Heretics. Weirdly enough, I have Team Heretics winning this and Leviathan going winless in playoffs. Definitely like a pretty crazy hot take there from me, but in terms of the consistency that this roster's had on the international stage, it hasn't really impressed me. And we saw just a little bit of the the shink in their like chain armor, their shining armor, whatever that phrase is in the group stage here. So I think that Team Heretics, in a close loss against Fnatic, are going to come against Leviathan guns blazing, and they're going to do their best to put themselves in a position where they're going to win that game. And I don't know if Leviathan has the depth that they need to. I think that, funny enough, King is a limited player on that team in terms of his responsibility of IGLing. I think that if King actually paired up with an IGL and he was able to play controller, he would probably be in consideration for the top 3 best players in the world easily. So that's kind of like where I feel with that. Now, this one is a little bit also of a hot take here. I think that in terms of these two matches, G2 is going to win their matchup against Sentinels. Similar situation to like this dynamic here, where not necessarily that G2 are the big brothers of Sentinels in terms of experience, but I think that that's just a good matchup for them in terms of the way the maps are going to go and the confidence they have up against that team. With EDG and Team Heretics, I like EDG in this. I think Heretics are going to be in a spot where they kind of have to face a lot of curveballs and deal with a lot of weird stuff in terms of the way that EDG play and the comps that they have. And I think they're gonna slip and fall, and the experience is gonna kind of get to them there, where they're gonna kind of like run out of steam, even though they've been doing good basically all this year. So I have Team Heretics and Leviathan with a very early exit compared to some of these other brackets that you might have seen. And again, just my opinion on how I feel. I don't really like going down like the safest route of all time. I think it's kind of like interesting to think about the other options and how much how much factors play into this game: mentality, matchups, region versus region, consistency. It's just kind of like fun to play with at the end of the day. G2 versus EDG elimination game here. I have G2 going the distance. EDG is going to fall. I think this is a good matchup for G2 specifically. Valen will probably be able to kind of like control like the game here, and I also kind of feel like a support player pop off coming, a legacy Leaf slash Jonah slash Trent game against this team to push them into the lower final. This team is all about grit and perseverance, and I think that they have the chance to actually make a run here. Now, DRX and Fnatic, okay, position with two heavy hitters. DRX's path wasn't necessarily easier than Fnatic's, but at the end of the day, I think that DRX expended less than Fnatic did. And because of that, I think that this match actually will mean more to Fnatic than DRX. Not that DRX are going to intentionally try to lose it by any means, but I think that if they are in this position to lose this match, it's not the end of the world for them because they're going down into the lowers against in America's team, and they've done well in that regard so far. So Fnatic DRX here, in terms of the map bans, your Buzz versus Durka matchup, I think it's a similar dynamic to this G2 EDG game, where I like feel like a support player pop off, something even considering Boaster just having like a really good series, Boaster Hero or Chronicle, and I think Fnatic's actually going to get the edge here, and they're going to move on in the grand final, and I think that Fnatic is going to have really drawn out series here. I think that these are all 2-1 wins, very gritty matchups that come down to clutches, how you play advantage situations, etc. I think DRX are going to be a spot where they're going to have a lot of momentum. I see DRX winning the first map. I think Fnatic would maybe let Abyss through. I think DRX might beat them on it, and then Fnatic reverse sweep 2-0, or sorry, 2-1. Lower final, DRX versus G2. I don't think that G2 would let themselves come this far just to fall right there. We've seen it with them in the past. I mean, these guys are straight dogs, man. Like, they do not play around. I think G2 are going to move up to the grand final here against DRX. Um, Running out of fuel against G2's just energy, their the grit, the nature, the way their team operates. This is what they had their eyes set on this year. Once they made that roster change and they had these results, they are just carrying the momentum. They are just going forward. It's a battering ram. I don't think there's any stopping them. They're really well supported. The fan base is great for them, and they're going to be in a position where, in that kind of like home crowd, I'd say, of like DRX, I think that energy is actually going to fuel G2 to, go over the line and push it there. And now for our grand final, Fnatic versus G2 matchup from the upper semis. I have G2 winning this over Fnatic. I think the momentum that they're going to carry and how far they're going to go is going to be crazy to see. We kind of saw this with EG last year in terms of like what it means to like get the ball rolling. It was a very different form and a different time for EG, of course, but I think that these underrated teams that people, not that people don't take G2 serious, I think that G2 is a much more respected team than EG was in terms of both of those guys being rated as underdogs. But I think G2 are going to come into this guns blazing, and I think that this is going to be a really crazy grand final. But I do think that G2 can go the distance in terms of the map pool here. Again, I think they're hiding a thing or two, and I'm not surprised if Fnatic is doing the same. I don't think that this is going to be a blowout by any means. It's going to be very close, but at the end of the day, I'm kind of considering this. If you guys watch if any of you guys watch American football, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Super Bowl that they most recently won, um, they're coming from a position of all those players on that team when Tom Brady joined, they were all losers. All they knew what was losing and being made fun of and laughed at. And once they got that taste of victory, I mean, they could not be stopped. They're taking down top teams in the league, going all the way to the Super Bowl and going the distance. It's not the exact same for G2. I think that G2 players aren't losers. They haven't lost their entire career, but it's more of a thing where they're not really respected. They're coming into this as an ascension team, right? So they were just in challengers last year. These teams have been here for, a very long time. And I think people kind of like underrate them and they don't really like take them serious. And I think it plays a part into a player like Icy, for example. All season long, we've heard that this guy is just a role player. He's just a system duelist. He just wanders around and does whatever whatever the complaint is. Whatever the statement is. It doesn't actually fully matter to me. Fits into the team perfectly. He's weaponized perfectly. Okay, Valen, great caller, great system with Josh, Trent, Jonah, incredible support players. Leaf, just a literal, just Swiss Army knife. What do you want him to do? He can play any role. He can do anything. He could be more vocal or less vocal. He can match MVP the entire series, or he can have a quiet map, really, really just controlling just the comms and setups, organizing people, retakes, post plants, and he can finish a game with 11 kills, and he can still be the reason that they won in terms of the way that he was talking and how he was setting things up, keeping the energy there, having a fun time. So again, definitely a little bit of a wild card here. I'm kind of like pulling out, but at the end of the day, this is the way that I kind of see it playing out. I definitely view the game a little differently than people in terms of how safe or gambly I want to make picks. I kind of again, I am a little like ridiculous with it at times because I think that a lot of outside factors have maybe a little more weight than a lot of people think they do. But at the end of the day, this is kind of like my approach. Let me know what you guys think about what's going on in your bracket in the comments. And if you want to share a screenshot of it, just join the Discord and do it. A lot of people have been doing that already. It's definitely interesting to talk about, and I love having discussions about stuff like this. The channel has been getting a crazy amount of support, so thank you all so very much for that. And I hope you enjoyed. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Check out all the socials in the description down below. I appreciate you tuning in. That's all I got. T-Dog out of here. Deuces.